Okay, looks like we are online now. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in this beautiful world. Most of you will be aware of our Mind the Gap series. And this time we do have a most interesting issue. Are we ready for mixed traffic of autonomous and human-driven vehicles? Everybody, I'm sure, will agree that in the beginning, at least, we are going to have human as well as robot cars on the same traffic. I don't believe in separate lanes and these things. So we have to understand what that is going to mean. But before we are going into our webinar, I have to refer to some housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself muted as long as you are not speaking, so that we are not going to have any disturbing background noise. Please use the chat feature if you want to forward some questions. We like your questions, so please feel free. Whatever you have on mind, please ask. The whole session is going to be recorded, so everybody who is visible, please be aware. IEEE is going to record the whole session, and it's going to be available as an on-demand video as well. So who am I? My name is Axel Dijker. I'm a former BMW manager. Since 10 years, I'm on my own, and here in this function, I am the chairman of the Mobility from End-to-End Connection Group, Industry Connection Group. An Industry Connection Group within the IEEE world is a group of people taking care of whatever kind of, I'm always saying, hot potato in the industry. In our case, we are talking about autonomous driving, because this is, of course, the big thing in the automotive industry. And it's an open group, by the way. Anybody can contribute and can join. So what are we going to do? We are going to have our discussion about mixed traffic. I have to excuse myself. I just realized, because the American time just shifted to summertime, so the base time for the seminar is American Eastern time. So sorry, I had no time to correct it. We are starting at 14 hours and we are finishing at 16 hours. We are having with us Gert Gigerenzer, Ali Asami, Oyana Otegi, and Fanny Broil. I hope I pronounced fairly right all the names. In the end, we are going to have a panel discussion. I hope it's going to be lively. So feel free to come up with any questions. Our first speaker is Gert Gigerenzer. I learned to know Gert at a presentation he was giving here in Munich. And he was a little, not too sure about what is going to happen, autonomous cars, yes or no, and we had a little talk about it. So we will see. Of course, traffic is human-based. He comes from a psychology background, and he will tell us how we are working. How does our brain decide what is going to happen really or what happens in our back mind, because of course most of the decisions are done automatically or intuitively. Gert is a director of the Harding Center for Risk Literacy at the Max Planck Institute in Berlin, as well director emeritus, how do you pronounce emeritus in English? Okay. Of the Center for Adaptive Behavior and Cognition at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development. He's a former professor of psychology at the University of Chicago and a distinguished visiting professor at the School of Law of the University of Virginia. He got some kinds of awards for his work, including the AAAS Prize for the best article in the behavioral science, and looks like that you like to communicate in a positive way. So let's see what you're going to talk about. Please start your presentation. I will stop mine. The stage is yours. Gerd, yours.
Yeah. I will talk today about the interaction between the human mind and machines, about the difference, and also about what follows from decision theory to the potential interaction between humans and non-humans, machines on the road. So I will introduce first a distinction from decision theory between risk and uncertainty, then apply it to what complex algorithms can do better and what they can't do as well, and to what humans can do and not as well, and then use this distinction and apply it to the question, will level 3, 4, 5 be likely materialized? What would they entail? What would these levels mean for human behavior? And end with some visions of how the future of driving could be. That's the program. Are you ready? Then I'll start. In decision theory, there is a distinction between situations of risk and uncertainty. A situation of risk is one where one knows everything that can happen, all future states of the world, their consequences and their probabilities. Uncertainty means that knowledge is not attainable, that we cannot know what the future brings, then we cannot know all the consequences or the probabilities. Most situations that we have to deal have some degree of uncertainty. And if you apply the distinction between risk and uncertainty to the situation, to the question, what can complex AI systems such as deep artificial neural networks do well, and what can the human mind do well, then it leads what I call the stable world principle. Complex algorithms work best in well-defined, stable situations where large amounts of data are available. In contrast, the human intelligence has evolved to deal with ill-defined, unstable situations where there is lots of uncertainty and often little data. Example, a human child may see just one example of a cat or two, and then knows what a cat is in day or night and lightning or what else. A deep neural network needs 10,000 of examples to tell cats from other animals or objects. So it's just an illustration that the human mind works quite differently, has an evolved background on which it can do certain things faster and better than current machines. On the other hand, the moment it's a well-defined, stable situation, then neural networks, artificial neural networks, will outperform us by far. Examples are chess, Go, industry applications, and moreover, machines don't get tired, which is something important for driving. So That's the stable world principle. It means it's a good guess. Is the situation a stable one? And then we can trust complex algorithms. Is it not? Then we may either keep our hands off or make the world more stable. That's, for instance, what economists do when they model complex situations which are uncertain, and they model it as if there would be risk. So I call that the adapt to AI principle, to improve the performance of AI. If the situation is uncertain, that's the case for driving, for instance. One needs to make the physical environment more stable and people's behavior more predictable. So let's apply that to the situation of driving. And just to be clear, let me introduce again the 5 levels of automation according to the Society of Automotive Engineers classification. I use that because often there's a confusion what self-driving cars mean and what the alternatives are. I have here a quote by Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, who predicts every year that next year there will be basically level 5 autonomous driving. He hedges the way he says it every year because he knows it won't happen next year. So level 5 automation means that a car can drive under all traffic conditions safely and without a human backup driver. What we currently have is level 2 automation, which is different from level 1, which we had 40 years ago. Level 1 has basically one feature, such as distance control. Level 2 has an integration of several features, such as automatic parking. Level 3 can do everything, but still needs a vigilant human driver in case something goes wrong. Level 4 is a car that drives without a human backup, but only in restricted and well-designed areas. I will make the point that what we likely get are level 3 and 4, while level 5, I would not bet my money on it. So let me just give you an idea about humans, how humans and machines are different, and what of the problems occur. One of the problems is that the human mind makes different kind of errors than a deep neural network. And we are not prepared to expect the kind of errors that machines make. And if machines could think, they would also shake their heads over the errors we make. So humans make errors because they don't pay attention, they're drunk, they are busy with their smartphone while driving. And here's one example about a strikingly different error that machines make. So here's an example of a deep artificial neural network that learns to tell school buses from other vehicles or from any other objects. And that's something that's relevant for an autonomous car. It has learned, after 10,000 of examples, to classify correctly pictures of school buses and to tell them apart from others. Now, there are so-called adversarial algorithms that find out what the weak points of the network is. And in this example, the middle picture shows some colors and pixels that are that I have amplified by a factor of 10 so that you see anything. And now this picture is superimposed on the left picture of the school bus, resulting in the right picture. What do you see? The human mind still sees a school bus. The deep neural network, which is well trained, sees no school bus, but an ostrich. That's just an example about the kind of errors that humans versus algorithms make, and they're quite different. And in any interaction between humans and machines, we have to be aware that the errors are quite strikingly different. And here is another kind of uncertainty that an autonomous car has to realize, namely humans taking advantage of the autonomous cars. So the cartoon, which is by my colleague Ian Ravan, shows that, remember kids, you should never look before you cross, because driverless cars will always stop for you. That's a cartoon, yeah? Now, the reality is, how will driverless cars be able to deal with all the imagination humans have? And here is my short prediction for the future. I think level 5 cars are unrealistic to be our future, and because of the stable world principle. What's realistic is much more interesting than level 5 cars, namely level 4 cars. Why are they more interesting? Because they require that we adapt. And they're not just a toy that drives us around. And that adaptation has happened all the time in history, and also in the history of driving. Already in the 18th century, in Paris, regulations were made to drive on the right side. At this time, these were horses and pedestrians and carriages, because of the unbearable traffic. And people were reluctant to do this, just as years before, they were reluctant to follow the order that one should not empty from a house through the window the chamber pot on the street in order to keep streets clean. So level 4 is a realistic alternative, but it requires implementing the adapt to AI principle. Also, a realistic alternative is level 3, but it will requires keeping drivers under surveillance. That means make drivers more predictable. And here is a short version of what it might mean, level 3 driving. So the method is then make humans more predictable. Remember, level 3 driving requires a vigilant human behind the steering wheel. And the danger is that if the cars get better and better and better, and you can drive for hours safely, people won't pay attention anymore. As it happened in some of the, in this famous accident with the Uber tribe in Arizona, which killed a woman with a cyclist. So how to make humans more predictable? And here humans on the behind the steering wheels. That may result in a 24/7 surveillance of the human driver behavior, such as cameras that make texting while driving or video watching illegal and immediately record it and react to that. That was the problem with the Uber accident. And other things like drunk driving, not wearing seatbelts, not paying attention to the road. And important is a direct behavior modification through immediate reward and punishment. So you might just get a notification if you speed that the ticket is now deducted from your online account. So immediate reward and punishment. The benefits of level 3 driving would be an immense reduction of fatal accidents, and also that speeding, jumping red lights, and reckless driving will become the Wild West of the past. So I hold that for a possible future, but it will, as I said, it will change our own behavior. We have to be more predictable to cope with the capabilities of AI. Now here is the other vision of level 4 driving. And I emphasize they are not incompatible. We probably will have different systems at different places. But here the idea is to adapt cities or highways to level 4 driving. So the method is now make the environment more stable and predictable. So that could happen by designing entire cities around level 4 cars. And these kind of cities are already being planned in Japan and also in China. It would mean to separate the roads completely from other kind of traffic like cyclists, pedestrians, and so to make the level 4 cars, which zip around in the cities, safe. And that also means outfitting roads and cars with sensors for communication. But it means remove pedestrians and cyclists from the streets through walls or maybe fences or other means, and redesign the entire cities. It can also mean to ban human drivers and make human driving illegal, at least there where level 4 driving is the vision. And at the end, you can imagine that if we would have level 4 cities and level 4 driving everywhere, then your children might ask you at some time, Daddy, is it true that when you were young, people were driving themselves and killing others? And being in a totally different world. And that's why I think level 4 is much more interesting than level 5, because it wouldn't impact us very much. And so the adapt cities also means one vision would be to integrate level 4 cars, which will have to drive slowly to the cities to be safe with public transport. So there might be, you could envision a city that is designed around robo-taxis that slowly circle around and take you to some transportation means that's much faster. That can be to railway stations, to streetcars, to or to other means. The benefits of all of that would be an immense reduction of fatal accidents, and it would also mean to make privately owned cars obsolete, and cities packed with cars history. So we would have many more green places. And also another combination would be to follow the models of Scandinavian countries or the Netherlands, where one combines cars with cyclists. So the design of real cyclist cities is another alternative, but that's not the topic here, the cars. So let me summarize my argument. I have given you some kind of food of thought. So from a more principled point of view. So there's the stable world principle. That means AI, so that means here complex algorithms perform best in a stable environment. The background for that is statistics. These are statistical machines. The bias variance dilemma tells you that you do best if you have complex algorithms, if you really can estimate the parameters, good, and for that you need a stable environment. The adapt to AI principle tells us what to do if that's not the case. The answer is we need to make the environments which are partially unstable and also our behavior more stable and more predictable. And that's the interesting thing. And that's what happened to humans all the time. New technologies had always have an effect on the behavior of us. They basically are civilization machines. And in my opinion, level 5 driving is an unrealistic option, despite what Elon Musk tells us. And in the case of Elon Musk, there's also a political agenda. He is against public transport. And he has been using level 5 arguments to convince politicians that there's no need to invest in California in more public transport. And as you know very well, the big plan to have a fast train between San Francisco and Los Angeles expired, was torpedoed. At the moment, he's trying to convince politicians that one could do tubes underground. And I think that's also a distraction maneuver in order to prevent investment in public transport. So, but that's the political side, and I'm not going more in this here. What is realistic is level 4 driving, and probably combined with level 3 driving. And level 4 driving requires to make humans more predictable, that they really pay attention when something goes wrong. And level 4 driving, where no humans are anymore near the steering wheel, if there is one, requires to make the environment more predictable by banning pedestrians, cyclists, and human drivers from the streets. And that will be a huge change, both in the design of cities, of highways, and also in human behavior. But it will increase safety, but at the cost of more surveillance and also restricting and controlling human behavior. Thank you for your attention.
You have to stop your sharing, please. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Quite a clear positioning, Gerd. I really have to thank you. And the issue of our nice friend Elon Musk, I think we take aside for the moment. We are having some questions. Some people from China looks like are referring to an accident which happened in November last year when Model Y did kill people. The car looks like tried to park, but then with full speed went through all kinds of accidents. I saw this video, and the question is, how is it possible to avoid such kind of accident? Gerd, do you have an answer?
I think there will be never possible to avoid all accidents. The question is whether a certain design, be it level 3 or 4, will lead to fewer accidents than what we have now. That's the question. The point is that machines here, deep neural networks, will always make errors that we do not expect. And I've given you an example because it's a statistical machine that basically analyzes it, for instance, when it tries to find out whether an object is a school bus or something else. It is based on an analysis of pixels. Pixels are analyzed on 3 dimensions, on 3 colors, and it looks at certain patterns. This is completely different from how the human mind works. And therefore, we will always have unexpected errors by machines.
Okay, there's another question from Helen Gold. Is it realistic to rely on level 3 with having a human in the control loop? Can humans be relied upon to quickly shift attention and come up to speed and take over control? You know, within the automotive industry, this 6 to 10 seconds scenarios handled means that the car has to stay on a stable condition. What that means for at least 6 to 10 seconds till the driver is really back on control. What do you think about that?
That is a very good question. And I think there will be things happening which where one has to react faster than 6 to 10 seconds. And if these things happen, human attention cannot come back. So if a driver would watch a video while a level 3 car is running, to get back to the street, it takes time. Therefore, I believe the real option will be level 4 and not so much level 3 because of that kind of problem. Human attention can only focus on one thing. The moment we do multitasking, our performance goes down on all of these tasks. That's how we work.
Okay, one last question. Rajat Kumar Panda, he asks, will cobots with high-tech sensors would avoid accidents? I think the question is targeting for to increase the accuracy of picture recognition by LiDAR, by radar, by ultrasonic sensors, whatever. So is it possible to avoid, or at least to a certain extent, or as far as necessary, technical failures by AI or whatever kind of picture recognition system is behind by just adding more and more sensors?
Yeah, you can add more and more sensors and it will increase safety likely. But the key problem still is there. The machine intelligence is different from human intelligence. It will make errors we do not expect. And that is why you need a vigilant driver, if it's level 3, or you need to make the environment in a way that it is predictable.
Okay, Gerd, thank you very much. Most interesting to hear the out of point of view of the psychologist, which was coming from a totally different world. Usually we have all kind of engineers here, and we do not enjoy so often a view from a totally different world. I really have to thank you for your most interesting input. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
Okay, next we are going to Ali Hassami. He is working on his own at the moment as an innovation director of Vega Systems. And in this context, he is most relevant in terms of his work for the IEEE Standard Association, where he is running the ethics certification program for autonomous and intelligent vehicles. What is that? The ESIC certification program for autonomous and intelligent systems, ECPAIS, is aimed at developing criteria for ethical assurance and certification of products, services, and so on. So what does it mean? I'm always saying Ali's idea and task is to translate what Gerd was referring to in terms of our handling, or how do we act, into a technical world to make ethics understandable for an engineer. And that is what he's trying with his 7,000 series of standards. But I think he's going to talk more about that on his own. Ali, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Axel, for the introduction. I'll try and cover the essence of the work we're doing under the ethics certification program at IEEE and associated work that goes into a standardization to support it as well. I come from a technical design background myself, and I was introduced to the context of ethics not so long ago, probably about 6-7 years ago, as far as application to industry is concerned. Most of you know IEEE as the world's largest global professional institution, and IEEE, one of the key operating units of IEEE is the Standard Association that is driving this particular initiative. Since my focus is on technology ethics, the first thing I like to do is to largely cover the principal areas of focus in technology ethics. And there are various schools of thought, but as far as focal points are concerned, in terms of principles and areas of attention, we are largely talking about degree of bias that exists in algorithmic systems and potential autonomy in terms of being fair about decisions that they make, where it interacts with our rights and values. Then we are worried about explaining the nature of decisions as well as being transparent. We worry or demand accountability in terms of who is to blame and what are the states of responsibility when it comes to when things go wrong. Then is respect for dignity and privacy of the individuals, followed by seeing an overall ethical, responsible governance at work. And finally, our old friends, safety and security that crop up and have been with us much longer than these other 5 categories ahead. And what I'll try to cover very quickly is that where we stand at IEEE's work regarding the top 5 largely ethical considerations. The work, as Axel referred to, constitutes 2 components. One is about standards and the other component is about certification process. The standards, one of the most notable stream of standardization at IEEE SA referred to as 7000 series. You see some examples here. These have largely started back in 2016. Most of them, the ones highlighted in red, are already done and published, and the rest are in the final stages of development. I had the honor and pleasure of joining and later on leading the IEEE 7000, which is offering a standard, offering a model process for addressing ethical concerns during system design. And by system, we largely relate to autonomous and intelligent systems or AI-based systems. What matters when it comes to regulation in the assurance of ethical behavior of anything, including autonomous cars, is to take an ecosystem perspective. And that means be mindful of various key players, stakeholders, and the interplay and the necessity for some coordination as well as regulation of all these key stakeholders. What we have done in IEEE since 2018, late 2018, under the program that at the time was called Ethics Certification Program for Autonomous Intelligence Systems, and now is referred to or evolved into what we call a certified program. Certified, you would notice
Ali, sorry, the slides are not moving. You have to click.
Okay.
You're still on the first chart.
Am I? That's amazing. Okay, may have to go back to less than full screen in order to do that. Apologies for that. Thank you. After I we started with a program called Ethics Certification Program, and that is now rebadged and moving forward, if you like, graduated to what we call a certified program. And this is the one with A, I, and E, standing for AI ethics, capitalized. Under this program since 2018, we have developed a whole range of specifications and criteria, and these criteria help us more or less evaluate and assess the specific characteristics, ethical characteristics of AI systems. And we have a particular program on autonomous vehicles that I would refer to as well very briefly. We have, since 2018, developed 5 classes of ethical criteria, and the publications that I'm referring to actually are the ones published last year, late last year, that refer to these 5 classes of predictors, effectively. The predictors are generally classed into those that contribute to a particular ethical property and those that adversely influence it. We refer to these as drivers and influencers. So there is a class of ethical criteria we have developed for determining degree of privacy and respect for privacy in any autonomous machine, including an autonomous car. And this has got 8 so-called drivers, 7 drivers and 6 inhibitors, and these are the factors. There is also, this is published under Creative Commons under the title of Ontological Specification for Ethical Privacy. And the reason we refer to these as ontological specification is that we are only elaborating these top-level predictors, the detail, so-called drivers and predictors for these are not included in the publication. There is an ontological publication, a specification for algorithmic bias that again help us measure the degree of freedom from algorithmic bias in a given context of application. There is an ontological specification that describes the fundamental parameters of transparency or ethical transparency. And it, again, in a similar style, comprises 6 classes of major positive influences for enhancing ethical transparency and 3 classes of inhibitory influences that need to be avoided to enhance transparency. We have got one ontological specification published last year, third quarter of last year, on ethical accountability. In the same structure and style, it highlights the fundamental forces and factors and influences that actually assist us with attainment of a higher degree of ethical accountability, and those that detract us from attainment. Therefore, we have to do something about, kind of a risk-reward type space. And the last item that we have published or in the process of publishing, this didn't get ready last year, so most likely it's due for publication. The work is completed, so it should hit the web space fairly soon, is one on responsible governance. What do we mean by governance? And basically, as far as autonomous intelligence systems are concerned, what are the fundamental activities, forces, energies, and initiatives that enhance responsible governance as far as autonomous machines and autonomous decision-making is concerned, and what are those which are inhibitory and need to be, if you like, taken on board and monitored and mitigated where possible. All of these publications that I've referred to are available from IEEE.org under Creative License, Creative Commons license agreement, and they actually are the only public material available from the program for the time being. So what we are talking about ultimately is these 5 classes of metrics, and you can see in some of these there are huge number of taxonomies in these suites of ethical criteria. They were developed based on a model-based approach rather than descriptive standard-based approach. And they go up to many layers of decomposition and taxonomic division in order to clearly and specifically define what we mean by accountability, what we mean by privacy, etc., and how do we measure these predictors in terms of being smart criteria. They're not check boxes and tick boxes per se. So by now, the program has reached a stage that we've got 5 categories of criteria completed, and we have embarked on developing and almost getting towards the end of developing criteria to measure and predict degree of fairness in an autonomous, intelligent environment. Now, a quick elaboration on this is that most of our criteria that I've referred to, from transparency to responsible governance, in the language of a standardization, are referred to as horizontal in the sense that they are not domain or context or culture specific, they are universal. And we have built into the architecture and methodology of our approach a way of quickly transforming these into a sector specific profile. So we call this sector profiling, and we have a number of initiatives, one on mobility that I'll quickly refer to. And it is possible to take any one of our horizontal criteria and create a specific version of it for application, say in a financial service or in health or in education, if the demand is there for that specific. So we've got basically the horizontals ready, the verticalization, customization, or contextualization in a specific sector is a very efficient matter of few months effort. It's not many years in contrast with standards. We started one of these profiling exercises for autonomous vehicles early 2023. We started focusing largely at the automation level 3 and 4 because we formed an expert group and ran a session for contextualizing how shall we approach this matter, and that was the consensus level 3 And 4 between the experts. So we are currently running workshops fairly regularly, weekly workshops, to determine the specific ethical predictors for autonomous vehicles. And we are aiming for completing this task eventually, sometime during second to third quarter of this year. And there is a potential for developing and publishing a specification or ethical standard for autonomous vehicles as well. That would lead to a similar type of certification regime being made available through IEEE. Just to give you a flavor of the kind of work we did, when we were contextualizing, if you like, trying to develop an overall understanding of the ethics of autonomous vehicles, we held a workshop, a scoping workshop in Germany end of last year, and we came up with lots of so-called ethical values, those conceptions of desirability or undesirability, and the dominant force in all of our ethical values that were post-processed was on the concept of fairness. There is a rationale behind this, but there is no time to go into this. So we have basically come up with 7 so-called core values that we have identified, of course, with the consultation of a group of experts, both in AV and philosophy and ethics, so to speak. And this is the work that we are taking forward, building on fairness and more or less bringing the other values such as well-being, accountability, privacy, trust, into the overall profile that we want to convert into a number of predictors for ethics of autonomous vehicles. There are many references that obviously people are welcome to refer to. And thank you very much for your attention. This is the very quick journey through IEEE's contribution to technology ethics and the specific work we are doing in the context of autonomous vehicles. Thank you, Axel.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you very much, Ali. Most interesting question, of course, how to translate human thinking ethics into something what an engineer accepts and can handle in his practical world every day. I still have difficulties to understand that, but the first question, of course, is that he has to know about it. So what is the strategy, how to communicate this 7000 series?
Well, the 7000 series are a set of standards. They are largely process standards. Basically, they are recipes of how to go about designing autonomous systems that factor in ethics. Whereas what I have been covering at the latter part of my talk is about a set of criteria that we have creatively identified, not through web searches or publications or looking at various major organizations. We started from a clean sheet with a panel of experts with complementary expertise and knowledge from ethics to technology, and derived the fundamental predictors that help us understand any one of these key ethical properties, such as respect for privacy or transparency or good governance. And these are smart in the sense that they are specific, measurable, realistic, attainable in the traditional thing. They are not checkboxes. Have you got A, B, and C? And if you tick 90% of the checkboxes, you're okay. So what we have done, we have captured the concepts in a kind of a model, in kind of a mind map, then translated the components of those concepts into a data structure. And that data structure gives us the smart criteria and the way of measuring how much of, for example, good governance do we have? What does good governance translate into? How much investment do we have in competency, in training, in having an ethics officer in an organization? These are the kind of parameters that we have developed, and we've got 5 classes of those as I have elaborated.
Perfect. Of course, you know better than I that the basics of human thinking is depending on the region as well. In China, people are evaluating things in a different way. You mentioned the key area of fairness. What is seen as to be fair in Europe or in America may not be seen fair in China or the other way around. On the other hand, you mentioned your certification scheme, which should be available end of the year. So is this certification for world certification going to be, or is it just for a special region? Please elaborate a little on that.
Of course. You may remember I showed you a slide on which I explained that the criteria that we have developed for assessing degree of transparency, accountability, freedom from bias are horizontal. That is, there are universal, generic ethics. And what we have is a capability built into our methodology and approach that we can take those and customize them. And the customization doesn't need to be for an industry like autonomous cars or application of AI in medicine or in finance. The customization could be for a particular context of application or even culture. So if we took our, say, transparency criteria, we can generate with the help of course, people knowledgeable about that particular context, such as Confucian-based culture. We can take transparency and say, this is a version of our transparency horizontal criteria that are aligned with the Confucian style of thinking. So we can culturally or technologically or sector of application customize what horizontals that we have got so that they are more meaningful, they are more pertinent, and they add more value, and they speak the language of that territory. If somebody is talking about finance, it's probably between 2 cultures you mentioned as an example. But you think about industries. People who deal in finance are using an entirely different language to those who are in engineering or in health sector. So that degree of customization is fundamental part to our approach. Whenever somebody approaches with a specific demand, we tell them about our 5 criteria. If they're happy with generics, they don't want customization, so be it. We use what we have for application. But if they do want, if they are specific about their culture or their industry, we run a quick exercise to customize the most relevant suite of criteria for that industry, then use that for measurement and certification.
Okay, last question from Simon Burton. Simon, welcome. He is asking, is there work on defining expectations on the types of evidence that would be used for arguing that these properties are met? For example, some ethical questions might not be acceptable answered using empirical quantitative arguments alone. You have to know that Simon is working on safety and security, specifically here in the Fraunhofer Institute in Munich.
Right. obviously, a question from a well-informed practitioner. Of course, the data structure that we have for our SMART criteria actually says what is the concept behind this criteria, what are the ethical requirements that come from that concept, what is the duty holder this applies to, and what is whether it must be fulfilled or it's an optional requirement. And then we define what exactly is the nature of evidence that is required. And most of our, almost entirety of our criteria are built on this data structure, that we have very detailed definition of what the evidence needs to be, even how to measure that evidence, whether you should measure it in a binary, acceptable, reject, or tertiary or quaternary, or measure it in kilograms or whatever. So every one of our ethical parameters has got a detailed list of evidence, and each one of those has got its own technical units of measurement in order to be objective and independent from human perception and subjectivity.
Thank you very much, Ali.
Pleasure.
For time arguments, we have to break here. I'm sure I will bring you together, Ali and Simon. We are going to have some nice, interesting discussions. So now we have to go ahead with our presentations. Next is Oyana Otegi. Oops, why is that not going on presentation mode? So, okay. She worked at the Fraunhofer Institute in Munich as well as a senior researcher, but now she is working at Vicomtech, or Vicomtech, I hope I pronounced it fairly properly right. Vicomtech is in Bilbao, which is on the Basque country, the northwestern Spain. Vicomtech is helping the local industry to support them in terms of high-tech issues. She's responsible, the head of new ITS and engineering department, and she is working on safety systems and human-machine interfaces. So how this is exactly supporting Ali's point. We have to make the world, humans, understand machines and the other way around. Oyana, I'm sure you got good ideas on that. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to start sharing my screen, so hopefully you can see my screen in full mode. Okay, so yes, thanks for the nice introduction. So my talk today is going to be focusing on trying to make these previous two talks on trying to bring them to how an engineering works to develop an automated driving function and try to ensure that can deal with the reality traffic situations that we do have nowadays. So the background, so I think that we have been talking about this in the previous two talks. So and also Axel has made this point at the beginning of the talk. So we are developing or trying to develop automated systems that are not going to be deployed 100% at one day. So we are going to need to live in mixed traffic situation and condition, which really means that we need to deal with the safety, and we need to be very rigorous how to deploy and ensure the safety of the whole traffic participants, not only the vehicle that is automated, but also all the people around it. So somehow my talk is going to be focusing a lot on how to ensure the safety of the AI systems that we are developing, and how, thanks to validation and testing, which plays a crucial role, how to go beyond this usual verification and validation, and how to handle these unknowns, these edge cases, where all the algorithms or the artificial intelligence is not really prepared to deal with. So the first thing that we can have in our mind is somehow to come with the Red Flag Act that came at the UK when they started to deploy the vehicles themselves, because they were dealing in similar conditions. So the people, the roads and everything was not prepared. So when they first deploy a vehicle, there was a need to have a human being with a red flag announcing everyone that a machine was somehow nearby. So this is something that we really want to avoid with the development and deployment of our systems. So first thing first is that the vehicles and the automated functions does not come alone. So the artificial intelligence is not only playing a crucial role on the automated driving system evolution or in-vehicle functionality, but also is helping to develop a more smart or smarter infrastructure, and also backend analysis of the data that we are capturing to somehow play or organize a little bit better the traffic or the whole mobility in a macroscopic way. Okay, so also when we first deploy the vehicles, we also did somehow on changes on the infrastructure requirement and on the people behavior. And why this? I think that this also have been said previously, but when developing an automated driving functions, we need to deal with the real environment, with taking into account that the real world is really hard to deal with. So it's very complex. The situation may pop up and be unknown, is unpredictable, and sometimes it could be very hazardous, which means that our systems in the best automated function should be dealing with this, which is really complex. And also to be realistic, so the driving action is one of the most complex actions that a human being is really doing, which this is a huge effort. This is why the automated driving somehow is not something that is binary, is automated or not. It's something that it has been defined using different levels that we have seen before, and that needs somehow to understand that the automotive systems or the automated systems need somehow to be deployed in an incremental way. So we cannot go from 0 to 5 without having the technology and all the infrastructure that somehow helps, and all the other technologies that help developing these functionalities. The main thing here, perhaps that has not been said before, is that until level 2, the whole responsibility of what is happening is from the driver. So the driver has the responsibility of acting or reacting to any incidents or any issues that pop up in the roads. While from level 3 onwards, the systems, the vehicle takes the responsibility while this is in automated mode. This said, what we have learned is, although a human driver can deal or apparently is dealing only with its own perception system in the handling of the situation, the human being has also some kind of other information that he or she is also processing at the same time. So we have a lot of contextual information coming from different sources that we bring into our minds and use that when we are driving. So for the higher levels of automated systems, what has been or is discussing is that the infrastructure might play a very important role, because from the infrastructure side and using communication, we can enhance and extend the perception system of the eco-vehicle. Especially, and a good example of this is that Mercedes-Benz has deployed a real level 3 driving function under specific circumstances, where the vehicle has the support from the infrastructures. So this means that step by step and also making different things cooperate and different elements cooperate, we envisage how to deploy and how to really ensure the safety under higher levels of automated driving. And this is also because when we are talking about AI, we usually say we do have artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is also divided into different types. So we do have the narrow artificial intelligence, which is now the most common artificial intelligence that we know. So it's the one that we really use and the one that is really deployed and used, which is narrow because it's only focused on a specific function. And under a specific function, we understand like displaying or whatever, but only applying or realizing a unique functionality. When we are talking about general artificial intelligence, we are talking about an intelligence that is or can replicate a human being in sense of understanding, learning, and somehow acting. This kind of artificial intelligence for the moment is not existing or deployed in reality. And then we have the third level of artificial intelligence, which is the super artificial intelligence, which outperforms the human being. This is the one that we see in the movies, in the sci-fi movies. So for the moment, what we need to stick to is that we need to realize these automated driving functions using this narrow AI. And this narrow AI has some kind of limitations, okay? And when we deploy and when we test and when we define how to deal with these automated functions, we need to take into account that we have limitations from the usage of this narrow AI approach. It's very good because it's goal-oriented, so it could have a very good accuracy on a specific goal, but only deals with a unique or a specific function. So it includes some kind of predefined constraint context, because if we try to apply this algorithm, this AI algorithm, to a situation where it has not been trained for, this function of this algorithm is not going to work properly. Apart of that, the artificial intelligence has also another challenges that has been also already mentioned. The first one is that it's kind of black boxes, which means that we always are going to have an outcome from the algorithm, but the human interpretation on why this outcome has happened is not really clear. Also, it's prone to some kind of security issues because we can deal or treat or somehow act in some of the data that is the input to the algorithm, and we can somehow fool a little bit the algorithm that we have defined. And also the data requirements for training these algorithms is huge, okay? And if we are not using the proper data, we are somehow going to have a prone to bias algorithm. So how to deal with all of this? So we have been talking about the different levels of automated driving. We have been talking that we do have narrow AI to deal with. So how to do or how to start developing a automated driving by addressing the problem step by step. So instead of addressing the whole functionality of a whole automated level, so what we are trying to do is somehow define some specific functions that are coping with this narrow AI approach to be somehow automatized to come to a realization and enabling the deployment possibilities of these functionalities. Here you see which are the functionalities that we are somehow developing to be part of this level 3 and 4 and be really able to be deployed under specific circumstances. So when dealing with one of these functionalities, whatever the functionality we select, we need to deal with a different approach. So for first, we need somehow to get the data from the external world. So we need to gather all this raw data by sense of different sensors in order to be able to somehow translate this raw data into a model that a computer can understand. So this first step, which is the perception step, means that we are somehow defining and describing what is happening in the world to a computer in a computer understandable way. If we are able to do that, we will have some kind of algorithms to at least have some kind of a scene evolution or prediction, which will help us somehow developing the planning and execution path. So at the end of the day, what we want to go is to move from point A to point B. So we need a trajectory, and we need somehow to monitor that we are doing it properly. And finally, one that we know how the planning is and the perception and the situation that we have in front of us, we do have the vehicle control. So especially for perception, we have a huge impact on AI algorithms and also in the planning and the trajectory execution part. So if we really want to, if we want to machines to think, we need somehow to teach them to see. Why? Because we cannot react to what we are not seeing. So this is something that is very important. So some of the situations happen because the system has not behaved properly in the perception stage. And for the perception stage, and also linking to the deep neuronal network, we know that the accuracy of this deep neuronal network are quite good. But given the data or behaving within the limitation of the data that we have used for training those algorithms, which means that if we really want to ensure that we do have a good approach, we need to pay a special attention to the data that we are using and also the way that we are validating our algorithm, because compared to the code approach, this approach of deep neuronal network are non-deterministics, which means that we can have the following edge cases where we really are somehow dealing and perceiving a great part of our scenery. However, there are some elements that our system is not dealing with, which means that we need to ensure that with our approach, we are covering all the situation. This is why we need to pay a lot of attention to the data quality that we are using to train our algorithms and the data that we are using to validate. So we need somehow to give some kind of key performance indicators or data monitoring approaches to ensure that we are covering all the cases. But not only that, it's not only about the data, it's also about understanding what the model has done and also how we are validating our approach. And additionally, once that we have our system, it's not only to bring in and deploy that, we need to monitor the the real situation that our system is facing, because as a narrow artificial intelligence approach, there are some situation or some requirements on the situation. So, for example, a perception algorithms that is dealing with a specific camera has some light limitations. So perhaps our algorithm is not going to behave well in night conditions. So our system will not be able to deal with night conditions. But it's not only about perception. It's not only about knowing what is happening or what kind of element I do have on the scenery. It's about also knowing what is the relationship between the elements that are on my scene. Is this pedestrian going to cross? Is this vehicle going to accelerate? Is this vehicle going to change the lane? So these approaches goes beyond the usual algorithms to detect or to classify the elements. It's about trying to combine some kind of elements to get more information, more digitalization on the behavioral model of our external world by having the means of predicting what is going to happen. Here we see how we are developing complex functions by putting together different set of artificial intelligence algorithms at once and building a complex systems. We are monitoring the outside and the inside of the vehicle because somehow we are dealing with level 3 approaches on how to advise on how to take control of the vehicle and how to ensure that the driver is ready to do that. In case of the situation, so somehow we need to ensure that the driver takes back the control, or otherwise we need somehow to come to the minimal risk maneuver where the vehicles make a safe stop of the vehicle without putting into risk any lives. But this is not enough, because from the vehicles or the automated functions that we have seen that has been deployed, we see that still we do have incidents with that. And especially if we see which are the incidents with the automated vehicle, we see that the 62% of the automated driving vehicles that are involved in some kind of incidents do have a rear damage, which means that the systems or the behavior of the system is not really understandable for a human driver vehicle, which is the vehicle 2, which usually comes and somehow hit the automated driving car, because it somehow stops promptly. So the safety argumentation and the definition of the target behavior of the automated driving function is crucial, which means that it is not only enough to test the elements by itself, it's also about testing the behavior that we want to for the vehicle to have. This means that all these elements, all these certification, all these standards that we have been discussing previously needs to be somehow taken into account when we are designing and when we are testing our systems. And also ensuring that we are taking into account all the possible situations and all the possible behaviors. Only deploying the system on real world is not enough, because we will need 1 billion of testing kilometers to see fewer than 10 critical misshapes, which means that we need somehow to deal with simulation approaches and real world testing and validation approaches in order to ensure that our system is behaving properly. And behaving properly is not only about the accuracy of each of our elements. We've seen before in the previous talk that there is this trustworthy and ethical approach. When we are defining our safety goals for our driving functions, we need to take that into account from the very beginning, from the design point of view. So it's not only about talking of system capabilities or system requirements. It's also defining from the very beginning which are the ethical goals, the liability goals, and the legal goals, because these are the whole package is the package that we need to validate, test in order to ensure the safety deployment of the automated system. So when having all this function and this description of what are the goals that we have, when we do have our system somehow develop following the rules that I've mentioned before, then we need to come to a testing methodology and in order to ensure all the possible situations that this vehicle may face in order to ensure at least until some point, all these safety approaches and the safety and the behavioral safety approaches of the designing functionality. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so we are back. Thank you very much. Most interesting, and yeah, it's a complex thing. Very clear.
Axel, sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, my microphone is on. Do you hear me, Rosie? Should be okay.
I'm not hearing you. I don't know if you are muted.
Axel, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Good. So I don't know, Oyana, why you can't hear me, but let's hope it's working now. Most interesting, I liked your model. The higher the automation level is, the more need for infrastructure there is. Interesting. I never saw this kind of idea on a PowerPoint, but it may make sense. A kind of restriction, ODD restriction, like a highway, is a kind of helping infrastructure as well. But what I really have in mind is your A1, A2, A3 level of of artificial intelligence. Where do we stand according to your the first one you called narrow intelligence, and then general intelligence, and then the last one, Gerd might have his own thinking, even surpassing human intelligence. Where do we stand with the capabilities computers do have today?
With the computers that we have today and with the approaches and the type of algorithms that we have, we do only have really deployed the narrow intelligence. Mm-hmm. Although these are very nice chat, GPT and so on, so they are still narrow intelligence because they cannot have, they are not like a human, they cannot really understand everything that is going on, interpret that and give an answer. So they do have means of accessing data, and they are using this data to somehow generate these answers, but they cannot go beyond this data that they do have like a human.
How much time, or what do you think, when are we going to be on what you called artificial general intelligence, which is somehow equivalent to our human capabilities?
So difficult questions. I don't really know because it's not only about a single technology, a single approach. Is somehow a complete set of not only hardware but also software and probably approaches on how to deal with that, how to really make a machine human.
Okay, sorry. There are no questions from the public. Sorry, there is one from Rajesh Kumar Panda. Is type 3 in AI near to deep learning model? I think that's referring also to your model of general or even higher artificial intelligence.
the deep learning approaches of these deep neuronal networks come to this narrow AI approach, which are goal-oriented and function-oriented. So we usually use a lot of data for having a goal. We do train our algorithms, and compared to the code or the traditional code approaches, these deep neuronal networks that are from the narrow AI outperforms the traditional codes, and the accuracy of these deep neural network are really good. On the other hand, they are quite a black box approach. That's why we need somehow to come to have this understand or this trustworthy or explainable AI by means of having control of the data that we are using, and also trying to expand these deep neuronal networks to have some kind of explainable or explanatory layers in between, for a human to understand what is the process that the data that comes from the input is somehow going through the algorithms until we have the outcome, so that we can interpret what is going on and have the possibility of saying whether this outcome makes sense or not, because nowadays it's somehow difficult to make this decision.
Okay, I'm grateful that there's still some time to imagine that kind of machine. Okay, thank you very much, Oriana. We are going to see you again within our panel discussion. And now we are coming to Fanny. Fanny has got a business background. She's working at Eurecat at the moment. I think Eurecat is a similar idea as Vicomtech. In this case, we are talking Barcelona area in Spain as well, trying to help the local industry to understand the jungle of EU funding, where Fanny is a specialist. She worked with DHL. She was coordinating the Spanish chemical pharmaceutical industry, and she got 16 years experience in coordinating and managing EU and international collaborative projects. So we are hearing, I think, specifically on the Selfie project, which is a big project within the EU project lines. Sorry, I was not on my thing here. Oops, sorry. We have that. So the stage is you, Fanny. Challenges and opportunities of mixed traffic management. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Axel. I was trying to share my video, at least for you to see me. Is it working now? Because it was blocked. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your introduction. I am happy to give you another perspective, the one from the mixed traffic, from the traffic management side, which is also quite challenging. We will see that in a few seconds. So as we have been hearing before in the former presentations, and which is quite well known, is that the CCAM, Cooperative, Connected and Automated Mobility, is expected to have a very positive impact on safety, but also on congestion. We will see that. Also on inclusiveness in costs, and it's from the traffic management perspective, it's also have the potential to be space efficient. In higher state scenarios, as we can see here in the chart, it's expected that in 2050, all the registrations of vehicles will be of level 4 or 5. This is a optimistic scenario. But what happens before this scenario? As you can see, we expect to spend many years having conventional vehicles between levels 1, 2, mixed with levels 3 and 4 to reach finally this level 5, which I will be calling in the presentation CAV, Connected, Cooperative and Automated Vehicles. So the timescale for transition will be really long, I would say at least for 20 years, let's see. And this raises a lot of questions for this transition period. How automated and human-driven vehicles will be sharing the road that we know and we have been hearing in other presentations?
Sorry, at least I can't see your PowerPoint.
Sorry, because I am sharing it, indeed. I will share again, let's see.
Was there? Yeah, now it's okay.
It's working now? Sorry for that.
Yes, all okay.
Okay, fine. So many questions arise, as I was saying. So how automated and human-driven vehicles will be sharing the road? As we have here heard that they may have very different behaviors. Also, the big question is how mixed traffic should be safe for all of the vehicles. And what about liabilities in case of an accident? More questions, but from the traffic management side this time. When it comes to orchestrating that mixed traffic, how to integrate the conventional cars, the human-driven cars, in a system that is going to be more and more automatized? And will the responsibilities and roles change in the traffic management? Because we will have newcomers in this ecosystem. For instance, car fleet managers. Will they have a say on applying recommended actions from the traffic operators? Or will they give the decision power to the driver? These are open questions still. And many other questions that for the sake of time, I'm not able to put here, but as you will see, many challenges, but also opportunities can be raised from the mixed traffic. As a first building block, the full understanding of what is happening on the road is a key issue for the safety. This, I think we all agree, and this has been mentioned in several presentations. Here comes an opportunity with the CAVs, the Connected, Cooperative, Automated Vehicles, to improve this situational awareness by acting as sensors. That has a big advantage on cost, since the deployment of sensors in the infrastructure can be costly. Already with 20–30% penetration of CAVs, we already know that loop detectors are not needed, since the CAVs information, especially on speed and location, can already allow us to estimate the average speed, the flow, and the density. From the CAV side, the positive point is that they will be able to identify and to recognize human-driven vehicles, similarly to identifying obstacles or vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, etc. So we can see now that there is an opportunity to use the CAVs and having an increased number of automated vehicles will support this cooperative perception. And of course, the human-driven vehicles will benefit from that, obviously. So this cooperative perception is the starting point for an efficient and safe mixed traffic management. And this is what the Frontier project intends to do. The Frontier project is a European project, which is going to be explained here. I will also explain the selfie a bit later. But let's concentrate on the Frontier, which is going to develop the next generation tools for the traffic management, empowering the CAV integrations within the traffic. So this is a collaborative project, which includes leading stakeholders in the field. One of the other activities of this project is the analysis of the driver's reactions in presence of a CAV, which is an important point, and also the interaction between the two kinds of vehicles. And finally, the willingness to comply with suggestions from traffic operators. The frontier, just to mention that it is addressing not just the traffic management, but also the network and traffic management of a full corridor from a multimodal perspective. Because it may well be that in the future we combine, as mentioned by Gert in the beginning, combine public transport with cabs, for instance, or let's imagine using another mode of transport when an event happened in the traffic, deviation to train, to metro, and so on. And this is not just for people, but also the movement of goods. So taking advantage from the automation, from AI, from connectivity, and all these technologies, Frontier has developed a global traffic management engine, which consists, first of all, of a suite of AI tools that support the implementation of automated applications across many actors involved. It includes also a proactive decision support system that combines, from one side, available domain knowledge, from the other side, prognostic information generated by predictive analytics algorithms. And finally, a personalized nudge engine, the big engine of the Frontier, which is the main working system, that will generate recommendations and nudges and communicate them to the fleets, to the travelers. So as you can see here, the methodology is following a logical step structure, like first observing, then orienting, deciding, and acting. If we go into the more detail, the main block, as I mentioned before, is the engine itself, the autonomous network and traffic management engine, because it's important also to consider that this part of the management is also being automatized. So this engine includes three main components: a response plan generator, we will see how it works, recommender services, and a response plan propagation services, which means that we have to tell the fleets that there is an action to be done. This is an example. This is a response plan module, which is going to suggest a response to this event, okay? In that project, we are evaluating different CAF's penetration rates and how it's changing the management of the traffic, and also considering different smart infrastructure readiness for different network optimization settings. So here we can see that in this, if a challenge arises, especially for the human-driven vehicles, how to communicate and convince users to apply a response plan. Here comes a great opportunity to have mixed traffic conditions, which is the use of cabs as traffic controllers. And let's see some examples. We can see in this first video, I am going to run it, I hope it works. Lots of blue vehicles running here in a 3-lane road, which is changing to 2 lanes. The typical normal situation where there is this accordion effect with decelerations, accelerations, last-minute maneuvers, and so on. What happens if we consider the same effect of having 20% of connected automated vehicles? The cabs are the red ones, as you can see here. The cabs get the instruction from the Frontier engine to keep a specific speed upstream to the risk of the bottleneck. They induce this new speed limit to the full fleet, including the blue ones, okay? So that the speed is harmonized, avoiding this accordion effect and allowing for safer driving. As you can see here in the chat on the left, on the right side, we see that the average total travel time is already decreasing with 20–30% of penetration rate of cabs, which is good. Another example is the one of lane change advanced scenario. This one is advanced because we consider here 80% of connected and automated vehicles in that same road. And we also are planning this scenario is implying that we need to know exactly the density per lane And the density per lane right now is, the needed accuracy is not yet available. So this is really a future scenario, but which is quite interesting too. As you can see here, we have the same blue traditional vehicles, the red ones, and the red ones. Some selected vehicles are chosen by the engine to change the lane. They turn into green color, as you can see here. And if for safety reasons a specific cab cannot change the lane because the lane is busy, then the assignment is given to another cab. This allows to balance the traffic in that same road, and this plan allows vehicle to go through the 2-lane area with the maximum speed and using the maximum capacity of the infrastructure. As we can see also in the chart, again, we improve the total travel time, of course, depending on the percentage of the penetration of the cab. This scenario also applies for deviation to another road, for instance, but we could even make some combinations. Vehicle variable speed limit combined with a change lane control and so on. So these are opportunities indeed for this mixed traffic that we have to work with and we have to analyze. However, all these opportunities need some key conditions to be put in place. And now I will start with these conditions, which are mandatory, and that we are working together with the Frontier Consortium. The engine itself requires information sharing between the relevant actors. That can be private, public, authorities, companies, and so on. This is not always easy because, as an example, if we deviate the circulation from a highway to another road, this generates, or this may imply loss of revenue for that highway operator. So we have to take all this into account. From Frontier, we are working on the establishment of new cooperation agreements that support this mixed traffic management at the same time that they protect the businesses and support the fluid and secure data exchange. Some elements are still uncertain, such as if cab fleet owners or cab private owners will support the use of cabs in the traffic management scenarios. This is an open question. Another important condition to make all this work is that within this engine, we need a dynamic conflict-solving arbitration models, which is at the end translating what I was explaining just before. In case of an event, the response plan is selected, the one that has the best score. The score is done by evaluating by the simulation framework and based on some criteria, such as the cost, CO2 footprint, and so on. Then we run the business model that determines the cost and revenue of that action for the operators. Then the most appropriate response plan is communicated to the operators, who apply their own decision-making process and accept or ask for modifications or reject this response plan. If all operators agree, they execute their own response mechanisms and they implement the plan. If not, there is a system that allows that the arbitration model is reactivated and search for a consensus, and the arbitration cost allocation methods are applied again, and there is a second iteration and so on. Another condition, and we have seen this in previous presentations, is for the smooth mixed traffic is to establish common rules and regulations, common to regions, common to countries, such as definition of ODDs, insurance policies, user rights, V2X applications, harmonized message to be broadcasted to all the fleet, and so on. The Geneva and Vienna Conventions are evolving, and in fact, some experts are already drafting some legal instruments on the use of cabs in traffic, which also include the role of the driver in the cabs and specific road traffic rules applicable to cabs. Frontier, as a project, will suggest recommendations to take into account the coexistence and interaction of cabs with human-driven vehicles in this process, because it is to our opinion, a key point to be followed and considered. Other conditions to make this work is the smart infrastructure, and this was also mentioned before. Of course, the VMS, the variable message signs that are dedicated for vehicles that are human-driven, and other infrastructure elements will still be needed in this transition period in order to broadcast specific messages to the human-driven vehicles. Here, many initiatives are already working on this physical digital infrastructure side by harmonizing the CITS, the Cooperative Intelligent Transport Systems, by upgrading existing road network with V2X technologies based on this scale, the ESAT scale that you can see here. And some projects specifically prepare the infrastructure for the mixed fleets. Here, there are many opportunities for innovation still, because it's not solved completely. To address this transition period, as examples of works, for instance, in our entity, in our RECAT, we are working with physical novel smart signage elements that can act as sensors, actuators, which are low cost, which is a key point, lightweight, also easy to replace and to maintain, easily embedded into existing infrastructure and also into the vehicles themselves. This is one of the paths that could be followed in order to enable a certain connectivity between infrastructure and conventional vehicles for interactions and personalized nudges. Another, and that's the last one, then another important condition for the mixed traffic is the cybersecurity and the resilience of the whole ecosystem. And this is a key point because it will contribute directly to the trust of all the road users. Here comes Selfie project, which is also an European project funded by Horizon Europe, also coordinated by Eureka. And Selfie works on this field, providing a set of tools that audit the SICAM system, is able to recognize threats, apply responses, regulate the systems with healing methods and mitigation actions. As an example, here we have a small drawing scenario, which is about a roadside unit being hacked and starting to give wrong information. Like, for instance, there is a construction zone, but this construction zone is fake. Without any adapted tool, the CAV, which is the car in blue, would have an unexpected behavior which could put at risk the yellow car. Let's imagine that the yellow car is a human-driven one. So using this kind of tools that we develop at Selfie, self-assessment, self-protection, and self-healing tools, the CAVs would jointly detect the incoherence between the RSU message and the onboard sensor information of several vehicles, and they would inform the VSOC, the Vehicle Security Operations Center. This VSOC would take some corrective healing actions to detect and to fix the roadside unit that has been hacked. Being able to manage this kind of risks is even more important when having human-driven cars around. The goal at the end would be that the yellow car, the conventional one, the human-driven one, shouldn't even notice anything about what happened just before. On the other hand, this system, the Selfie system, also allows the following feature. If the human-driven vehicle, the yellow one, is the one having a very strange behavior, the system would allow CAVs to detect it as an anomaly and would launch protection and healing procedures. For instance, reducing speed or something like that. As a conclusion of what we have seen, it's clear that we have here in mixed traffic both challenging and promising situations. First of all, it's unavoidable that we are going to spend a lot of time with hybrid states of traffic. It will be relevant for many years, so we have to get prepared on that. Another important point that we really need to add to our research as most of the studies are based on models and simulated environments, we, of course, need to better understand conventional and automated vehicle interactions in real settings, as well as the behavior of drivers, because here everything is more or less simulated. So we need more work, and of course we need to have, to some extent, a deployment of cars already. We've seen that for a smooth and safe transition period, it is crucial to establish a common regulatory framework, but not only for cars, also considering the coexistence of this mixed traffic. We have seen also that somehow the mixed traffic is raising some opportunities because the cars themselves can act as traffic controllers. But of course, their role and their rules need to be well defined for that. And we have seen also that further innovation and also investment in SICAM in general are needed, including the road infrastructure. As a last point, I would like to make a recommendation, let's say. I'm pretty sure that a key enabler for a smooth, safe, inclusive transition for both kind of vehicles is to involve all the stakeholders in the co-creation of the whole system, not just the tools, but also the governance, the arbitration models. And finally, I'm pretty sure that the industry will be able also to take advantage from many innovation opportunities arising from this mixed traffic, novel services, novel products at vehicle level, at infrastructure level, and so on. That's it from my side. Very many thanks for your attention, and don't hesitate